Our Torah portion of the Shabbat is entitled Ki Tissa. Ki Tissa means when you lift up, and specifically within context it refers to lifting up the heads of the people of Israel. This is an idiom expressing the fact that a census was going to be taken among the people as they're now assembled at Mount Sinai in the midst of the revelation. The portion is filled with Sturm und Drang. Arguably, in this portion we reach the nadir of Jewish experience in the Torah as the people build the golden calf. But what I'd like to focus on this Shabbat is not that nadir, but, if you will, a pinnacle, arguably, in the relationship between Moses and God. In the midst of all the Sturm und Drang, Moses comes back up on Mount Sinai, and an exchange, a dialogue occurs between Moses and God that is altogether beautiful and rapturous. God says to Moses, "Also this thing of which you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I will make known to you my name." Moses replies, "Show me, please, your glory." God responds, "I will cause all my goodness to pass before you." And I might add that to begin, God says he will make known his name. Then Moses asks to see God's glory. And now God is saying, "I will cause my goodness to pass before you." So it's indeterminate exactly what the content of this experience, of what the perception of God by Moses is going to be. God continues, "Lo tuchal lirot et panai, you shall not see my face, ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai, for no man shall see my face and live." And what unfolds then is God places Moses in a cleft of a rock, covers Moses over with, if you will, his hand, and then as God passes by, he removes his hand, so that Moses, if you will, sees God's back, but not God's face. Interesting. No man shall see my face and live. Are faces important? Well, for this Torah lesson in particular, faces are very important to begin. Consider the following. When I recorded my Devar Torah last Shabbat, the frame rate seemed to have been considerably faster than it is recording today. Today I seem to be blurry, and I suspect that this may well be a distraction. In other words, seeing my face in its own way may be every bit as important, if not even more so, than hearing my words, be that as it may. A far greater note. As Deuteronomy concludes, as the Torah concludes, it's said of Moses, "And there arose not a prophet in Israel like Moses, who knew God, panim el panim," who knew God face to face. Is this to suggest that perhaps here in our Torah portion, Ki Tissa, that God has, if you will, prevaricated? God forbid. No, but surely what it compels us to do when we measure our Torah portion against this verse at the end of the Torah altogether, it compels us to seek more deeply into the text and to see what we can find in terms of exactly what is the nature of seeing God's face. Of course, according to our tradition, we know from the book of Numbers that the quintessential blessing that the priests would bestow upon the people, and one that continues throughout our tradition until today, is the threefold priestly blessing, in which the words are invoked, "May God shine his face upon you," and then, "May God lift up his face to you." Elsewhere in the Torah, in the book of Leviticus, God expresses his graciousness to the people, his love of the people, by using the expression ufaniti, "I will face you," if you will, literally. In other words, the bestowal of grace is through the revelation of God's face. So clearly the Torah intends that in some way or another, we can see God's face. Of course, the question is, how exactly is that accomplished? Well, in Torah, at the beginning, in Sefer Bereshit, in the book of Genesis, there is a tale told that surely has tremendous bearing on how we can see God's face. Jacob is returning after his 20 years of exile, and the night before he's going to see Esau, from whom he has been long estranged. He has a wrestling match, a famous wrestling match, in which his name is changed, of course, from Yaakov, the heel, to Yisrael, Israel, struggler with God and with man. The wrestling match is against an Ish, at least that's how the opponent is described to begin. After the wrestling match, Jacob names the place Pnei El, meaning literally the face of God. And as the text says, he names it such, for I have seen, if you will, God face to face, and my life has been preserved. So, by Jacob's own account, he had seen God's face, and thus the name of that place is derived from this divine experience. The next day, he has the meeting with Esau. In the spirit of Sturm und Drang of our Torah portion, it's that same spirit of Sturm und Drang that permeates this meeting between Esau and Jacob. Esau approaches Jacob with 400 men accompanying him. Surely Jacob must have been very frightened at this prospect. But then the two men meet, they embrace and kiss. Jacob had lavished gifts upon Esau. Esau then says to Jacob, "Please, I don't need these gifts." And Jacob responds, "Please accept them from me, because to see your face is like seeing the face of God." So the obvious question is, who knew better than Jacob what God's face might look like? Just the night before, he had wrestled with the being and named that place in honor of the wrestling match and the being with whom he had wrestled, Pnei El, the face of God. Surely, to see God's face in the faces of our loved ones is well within the realm of possibility. And surely, every time we keep a mitzvah, every time we do what God wants us to do, God lives within us, so that indeed our face becomes the face of God. Not every human face, surely, is the face of God. All of us can think of any number of faces filled with hate, contempt, disdain, whatever the negative emotion might be, whatever the unholy act that face might be in the midst of. But surely with every mitzvah we keep, we become the face of God. May everyone only see God's face shining from our faces, and may we in turn seek God's face shining upon the face of everyone we meet. Then surely our world will be filled with shalom, with peace. Come study Torah with us at Temple Emmanuel this Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.